And it happened the second the shutter from the camera went off. Immediately, everything changed and I look at Sam and he is horrified. And these guys that experienced this with us, they just kept getting weirder and weirder. And when I turn around, I see the first thing that is absolutely unexplainable. I see... So on a recent trip to Arizona, there were no direct flights back home to Chicago after our trip without any inconvenient layovers. So we were looking over the layover flights and none of them looked appealing or convenient whatsoever. The most common one was a layover in Salt Lake City, but the timing of the flights just seemed exhausting. So we're just sitting in Phoenix thinking, why not just split up the travel days and just stay a couple extra days in Utah? This way we get to see two beautiful states in one trip. And it seemed like the perfect idea at the time because we had been working remotely in Arizona while we were there, so it's not like we were behind work. There was no reason that we couldn't milk this trip for a couple more days. Not to mention, we had credit card points and travel points that we had to spend. They were gonna expire soon. So the trip extension was basically free other than food. We had had a super outdoorsy trip in Arizona and I wasn't quite ready to go back to mundane day-to-day life. And I was so happy that we did this. Once we landed in Salt Lake, I was ready to go do something fun. Unfortunately, my girl had a little bit too much fun because she had caught a bug in between Phoenix and Utah. And she was feeling a little bit under the weather as we were landing. And everybody knows when you're coming back from a really fun trip, that's the easiest way to get sick. So she just needed to stay at the hotel and recuperate. Fortunately for me, she wasn't feeling so sick that she needed me around all day. And she was even encouraging me to go explore Utah and Salt Lake City while we were here. She was just telling me as long as I have room service and I have Netflix, I just kind of want to sleep this off. She was hoping to be back on her feet by the last day that we were there. And obviously I didn't want to explore by myself, especially where I was planning on going. And by absolute luck, one of my really good friends, Sam, happened to be in Utah at the same time. He had been traveling to different programs around the country to see where he wanted to do his residency. And it just so happened that he was in Utah for the same couple days that we were here. We were headed home to Chicago after, but he was headed to Washington and then Texas after we left. But at that moment, we were in the same place at the same time. So when I texted him my idea, he was immediately down. I wanted to go poke around SkinWalker Ranch, which was just a couple hours outside of Salt Lake City, and maybe hike up a nearby mountain to see if we could spot any UFOs. I'd been hearing about SkinWalker Ranch for years, so for me, it was a must visit while we were in town. Because think about it, when is the next time me and Sam are going to be in Utah together? I don't even know why I would come back to Utah. Like, it's beautiful there and all, but I don't have any business there and I don't have any family there. So this was really my only opportunity to pop over to see that ranch. So that's enough yapping about that. Sam got his residency interviews done and I tended to my girl for the first night that I was there. But we planned on heading out at about 7 a.m. next morning, so we would get to SkinWalker Ranch at about 10 a.m.-ish. We brought very basic gear, nothing crazy. We were planning on just parking on a random road and walking around the ranch's fence. Maybe sneak in if the opportunity presented itself, but we weren't preparing for any crazy hard hike. And we planned on driving up any hill that we wanted to UFO watch from. We weren't planning on hiking up any hills. This was purely a fun destination trip, borderline a tourist trip. We were driving up to whatever we wanted to see, and that's all we were doing. This was not strenuous whatsoever. We just wanted to see what all the hype was about and make our time in Utah worth it. So Sam pulls up to our hotel at 7 a.m. with his rented Toyota 4Runner. And I just tell Jess that I'll be back by tonight and I'll keep her updated as much as I possibly can. And I just head downstairs because she was okay. She was ready to start sleeping off her sickness. And I'm ready to go downstairs to see Sam. And I was pumped to see Sam. We hadn't done a trip like this in a while, so the energy was definitely high. We knew that this wasn't going to be like our other trips because we had such a small window of time, but it still scratched that same itch for us. Neither of us really knew that much about SkinWalker Ranch, other than your basic understanding that skinwalkers are a Native American thing, and there's some type of witch-animal hybrid. Realistically, we were going, for the most part, because of the UFO sightings in that area. And by UFO sightings, I mean classified military aircraft testing. That's what we think that really is. Because there's so many military Air Force bases in Utah, including Hill Air Force Base, which is rumored to be a testing ground for new classified military tech. If I'm being real with you, we just wanted to see some B-2 stealth bombers or some F-22s and we'd call it a day. So we just chop it up for the 3-hour ride to the ranch. Then once we start getting close, we know that we really need to be on the lookout for landmarks. We couldn't find the exact address of the place online, but we saw Google Earth images of what the gates and the fences looked like, and we had a general idea of what road it was most likely on. So we were just being vigilant for anything that looked familiar. And it turns out that SkinWalker Ranch is not hard to find. In fact, it was super easy because of the sheer amount of keep out signs that were surrounding it. The keep out signs basically led us to the front gate like it was a breadcrumb trail. We just cruised by the front gate originally because we didn't want to block it just in case anybody was coming in and out. So we just found a decent pull-off area nearby where we could leave the 4Runner with its hazards on. We just left the car about a quarter mile away from that main entrance and we just started walking the edge of the ranch. It was really fun just being there and looking deep into the property. It was a beautiful place, but if I'm being honest, didn't have that haunted, scary aura that we were looking for. Obviously, it was 10 a.m. and nothing really has a scary, haunted aura in the morning. It was just a lovely ranch with way too much private property signage. So we just kept walking along the edge of it towards the entrance, and then we saw the first thing that we found out. There was a series of posts in the ground right outside of the ranch's fence, and they had what looked like to me some type of cow skins or cow intestines wrapped around it. I could be wrong, that's just what it looked like to me. And they didn't smell great when we walked by them, but they definitely weren't freshly rotting. They looked like they'd been completely dried out for months. And obviously me and Sam leaned into the idea that these were warnings for anybody attempting to trespass. We made a series of alien abductions and cow mutilation jokes before we got all of our laughs out and moved on from the stinky skin posts. And if I'm being completely real with you, this place was boring already. We were just gonna walk up to the entrance and look at it for a couple minutes, maybe take a picture and then go back to the car to find an actually beautiful view. We had teased each other about potentially trespassing, but the amount of warning signs that they had out front, it just didn't seem worth it to us. I bet that they constantly get trespassers and they must have to make an example out of them by actually getting them arrested to ward off other thrill seekers from doing the same thing. To put it simply, the juice was not worth the squeeze on this one. If we were looking into the ranch from the outside and we were seeing some interesting stuff, it might have been different. We might have wanted a closer look. But this place was very mundane. If I were to sum it up to you, lots of rocks, very ordinary rocks, and some fields and buildings, I guess. But either way, we were gonna get our photo at the front gate. So we get up there and I prop my phone up on a water bottle right at the front door. And I set a timer on the camera really quick so I could run back and we could get a real picture of both of us. I set the timer for 10 seconds for some reason. We really only needed like 3 seconds. I just did 10 just in case. I heard a faint sound of a car coming up the road, but I didn't really think anything of it because we weren't trespassing. Either this car drives by and nothing happens, or it's somebody that works here and they just tell us to leave and nothing happens because we listen and we just leave. And as I click the button to start the timer on my phone, the car actually starts pulling up. And I just clicked it even though it was coming up and I just start backpedaling to where Sam is. I just wanted to take the photo really quick, but like I said, I chose the 10-second option for some reason. And whoever was in that car had no interest in waiting for 10 seconds. In fact, they weren't even interested in waiting for 2 seconds. They pulled up right before my propped up phone, honked right away, and then proceeded to start exiting their vehicle. And they started getting out after I gave them like a give us 1 second signal with my finger. And trust me, I get how obnoxious that is. They're pulling up to their ranch and we're blocking the entrance for a photo. And I'm like, give us a second. Super obnoxious. I totally understand. I was just feeling a little bit insecure because a fully blacked out Chevy Tahoe just pulled up and I have a 10-second timer going and we're taking a tourist pic. So I just malfunctioned and the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, just 1 second and then we'll leave. These 3 guys just hop right out of this Tahoe and they just start saying things along the lines of, you're trespassing, you can't be here, step away from the gate. They're being very blunt, not super aggressive, but matter of fact. You could tell that they were clearly used to this and they were done with any interactions with anybody like us. But we were in a super awkward position because we knew that there was just a couple seconds before this timer went off for our photo. So we're just not moving, staying still, just trying to get this picture. And we might as well just wait 3 more seconds while these dudes are barking at us. Otherwise, we're not just embarrassed, we're pictureless and embarrassed. And the 3 beeps that start to count down the last 3 seconds of the camera's start. And I could see it from the corner of my eye that these 3 guys noticed that sound. And they all just kind of accept that this photo is happening. Then it goes to 2, and then 1, and then as the artificial sound of a shutter goes off and the flash goes off, everything changes. It's like everything got a little brighter and a little more colorful. And the shutter sound was the last sound that I heard before it felt like my ears popped. And I couldn't hear anything. It didn't hurt or like actually pop. It just felt like we walked into a soundproof room. There was no more natural or ambient sound around me. The sound of the Chevy Tahoe was gone. The the wind, the sound of the gravel under the men's feet, everything. It was as if something just plucked away all the sounds from around us. It wasn't exactly silent though. It was almost like going under the water at a pool party. You could hear everything, but it sounds like it's at a distance. Or as if there's a thick layer of something in between you and the sound, in that case would be water. And my eyesight felt a little bit different too. Everything was just really vibrant, and I became immediately aware that the other 3 men besides me and Sam were human beings. You know when you're walking by a stranger in a city and they feel like a stranger, but then you meet somebody at a dinner and they feel like a real person? Simply because the setting changed, your perspective of who they are and your ability to get to know them just shifts, completely based off where you are and who's around. It felt like just moments before that these 3 guys were complete strangers and just high-level private property owners, and they're completely no nonsense and they're intimidating. But now I'm looking at them and I could see the personality in their eyes. I could see them as the people that their mother or siblings know them as. They aren't intimidating at all anymore, and I could see it in their eyes that they're looking at us the same way. We're not just random tourists. They were so dismissive to us just a couple moments ago, but now they're looking at us like they would get to know us. It was the most bizarre feeling that I've ever felt. The only thing that I could slightly compare it to is when they turn the lights on at a club at 4 a.m. Out of nowhere, the entire mood changes and everybody looks completely different. All of a sudden, all of the girls' heavy makeup and dresses, and the boys' Versace shirts and fake chains get illuminated for what they really are. A costume that's meant to make them look cool, but in reality, they're just a lost child, desperately trying to find validation in a dark room with sticky floors. That example is being rooted and being drunk and indoors, but it's the only comparison that I could make. The illusion of status and outfits was completely lifted from us, and all of a sudden, I could feel that we all feel like equals. I couldn't understand why I was feeling these incredibly specific feelings. Why does it all of a sudden feel like we're exactly the same as these men? But then I saw it. Sam must have seen it before me, because the only reason that I looked is because he managed to nudge my arm. He just gave me a little elbow and signaled me to look where he was looking. So I whipped my head towards the ranch, and I see what looks like a blue orb hovering right beyond the gate, and it was floating at just about eye level. Just floating. And I realized when I saw it twitch why I was feeling what I was feeling. When it had slightly twitched, it was clear that it was turning its attention from the other men to us. It didn't have any imperfections or signs that it had a front or back. It was just this perfectly symmetrical, lightly glowing blue orb. But I could tell that it was looking at them before, and it was looking at us now. We felt like we were humans and equals because there was something non-human floating right beside us. It's crazy how quickly the facade of social structure just crumbles when a couple humans are faced with something non-human. Immediately, everybody just sees each other as team human. The tribes go away, the barrier of friendships go away. You're human, I'm human, I got your back against something non-human. But was this thing making my hearing and vision feel this way, or is this some type of adrenaline dump? So we're just standing there in this fever dream of a situation, gawking at this thing like a group of monkeys. Just a couple monkeys staring at a magic trick, unable to gather the words to communicate with each other. It did one more slight rotation, but this time it rotated as if it was looking towards the sky, and then it started to vibrate. And the light vibration only lasted for a second until it shot up into the sky. If you had blinked, you would have thought it just disappeared, but if you kept your eyes on it, you could barely see that it just shot up vertically. Then all of our heads just tilt up to the sky to watch it. This thing ascended thousands of feet in seconds. Then when it got to its preferred altitude, it started to curve in an arch over the ranch and over the mountains in the distance. And it's not like it flew over the mountain, it zipped over the mountain. And I use the term zipped because it didn't move like a projectile. It literally zipped. I'd compare it to a fast sports car versus a Tesla. The sports car is definitely fast, but it has a rumble to it. The Teslas are just as fast, if not faster, but they just zip. But we're just watching this thing disappear over the mountains, and then the sounds start to fade back in, as if somebody was just slowly turning the volume back on. And the disturbance in my vision kind of started to fade back to normal, as if somebody was dragging the saturation and the vibrance back to almost neutral. And I say almost because it was still slightly off. It was almost normal. Maybe it felt off because I could remember how things looked while it felt enhanced. So maybe the memory is blending with the reality. But I remember just shaking my head and rubbing my eyes, trying to recalibrate them as everybody else started talking. And while I'm white knuckling my eyelids, one of the men broke the silence in a very serious tone. It was almost in disbelief. He just said, "We all saw that, right?" He was just announcing it to the entire group, and I first heard his guys start answering him with yeses. But I didn't know if he was expecting an answer from us until I stopped rubbing my eyes. And when my vision stopped kaleidoscoping from digging into them, I could see that he was looking directly at us for an answer. And I could also still see this faint difference in my vision. It wasn't enough to freak out about, but I really wanted it to fade away. It was faint, but the intrusive thoughts of my vision being permanently damaged started to seep in. But I wasn't gonna freak out unless it started to last for hours or days. Plus, I had to answer this guy's question, so I didn't even have time to spiral into bad thoughts. So I look at Sam to see if he's gonna take the lead in this conversation, but he's just shaking his head in a very serious manner without opening his mouth. And I quickly switch from a nod to a shake after I see that he's denying seeing it. We have no idea how this group of guys is about to react to us seeing that. Because for all we know, we just saw something either otherworldly or highly confidential. And it hit me right then that Sam might have his mouth closed because he's in fear for our safety from these guys. We might have just seen something that we shouldn't have, and we might very likely be in a pickle. And I could feel that Sam definitely wants to let them talk first before we give any more information about what we just saw. So I just stalled out too, just nope. And the man that was clearly the boss of the three men, well, first he started clapping and cheering and celebrating. He was acting childish and jumping around and celebrating, and the guys that he was with started following suit. And Sam and I are just standing there in disbelief. From what we just witnessed with this blue orb and now what these guys are doing, this situation couldn't get any more bizarre, so we didn't engage in the celebration. All I wanted was an explanation from this guy. These guys were high-fiving and hugging and looked so happy, and I wanted to know why. And finally the boss started walking over to us with a big smile, and he just started blabbing to us. He was talking to us as if we were friends of his that he hadn't seen in a minute, and he had to fill us in with some new gossip that we missed out on. And this guy just starts going. He goes, "Don't worry, you guys aren't in any trouble. I knew that newcomers spiked activity, but that was amazing. You guys saw it, right? How amazing was that? Thank you guys so much for making that moment happen for us. Those things usually don't come that close. It must have come over here to check you guys out. I've never even seen a blue one during the day. Come on, please tell me that you guys are willing to go on record with that experience. Will you fellas please come to headquarters to give us your testimony while it's still fresh in your mind? It could be anonymous. It could be totally anonymous testimony if you don't want your name to be attached. This is amazing. Multiple witnesses, including 2 strangers. The guys are gonna love this." This guy was just talking at us so excited and so happy. But what did he mean that newcomers spike activity? Like, what is happening here? Why was he even thanking us? Then we started to think, is this a ploy into fooling us into talking? I can't seem to gauge what this guy's true intentions are, so I just stand there lips sealed. Sam stepped up and broke the silence on our side by saying, "Sir, we did not see anything and we'd like to leave if that's okay with you." That was okay with me. I wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. But it wasn't okay with the boss. He didn't get aggressive, but it was more like he wasn't going to take no for an answer because he seemed so excited. And he replied with a big breath with his hands out in front of him, as if he was trying to recalibrate the conversation and give us the inside scoop. He just goes, "You guys are not in any trouble at all. You guys weren't even technically trespassing. I promise you guys there's going to be no negative repercussions if you come to headquarters. We mean you no harm here whatsoever, guys." He was being polite, but Sam cut him off pretty abruptly with just saying, "Sir, are you military? And is what you just saw military classified?" Emphasizing that only he saw it and we didn't, just to cover our tracks. And the boss just started laughing. He just goes, "Absolutely not, guys. Nobody on this ranch is military. I promise you there are only scientists and ranch hands here. This property is completely privately owned, and we were hired here to study unusual things, like that thing that you guys just saw." Emphasizing that we saw it too. Sam wasn't fully ready to let his guard down, so he rebutted with, "Sir, I'm ex-military. If you need us to sign anything to ensure that our country's secrets stay secrets, we're willing to do so. I can have you contact old superiors of mine to vouch for me. We're happy to cooperate so we could leave safely and we could keep our country's secrets safe." I fully realized what Sam was worrying about now. He thought that there was a very good chance that what we just saw was classified, and these guys were either going to make us disappear or give us a bunch of acid and just push us into the desert, and either we die of exposure or we get found and we get deemed insane. And the boss just starts laughing again, and this time he puts his hand on Sam's shoulder and he just says, "I appreciate the sacrifices you made for our country. I promise you, I am not military. I'm not here to hurt anyone. The only form I want you guys to fill out is a testimony stating what we just experienced. And I give you my word that what we just saw was much more than than some classified project. There's something very special happening on this ranch, and you two were blessed enough to witness it. I could tell that this lowered Sam's guard slightly. He definitely wasn't convinced that what we just saw was a blessing, but I could tell that he didn't feel like we were in immediate danger anymore. He might have gotten the sense that this guy definitely wasn't military. He didn't feel like military to me. He looked like a geeky scientist, which added up with what he just said. I felt as if it was my turn to chime in on this conversation, but I was definitely going to turn the direction of it a bit. So I just go, yo, what do you mean that there's something special happening on this ranch? So the boss turns his attention towards me, and he seemed so excited to fill me in. Just picture Willy Wonka standing out front of his chocolate factory. This guy looked like he was sitting on a pile of secrets and surprises. And he just goes, guys, I've been a scientist for 30 years. I've seen incredible feats of engineering and ingenuity. I've traveled the world and I've spoken with some of the greatest minds of this century. But nothing holds a candle to what we've done on that ranch. What we have found here is borderline magic, and I've dedicated my life to studying. Listen, guys, I appreciate people that are passionate about their work, but this guy sounded like he was in love with this ranch. So much so that it actually did bring my guard down quite a bit. He was clearly dead serious that he was just an obsessed scientist, and he was genuinely so excited that outsiders had gotten a glimpse into what he was studying. I had a lot of questions at this point, but I didn't really know where to start, and the boss could clearly sense it in my face that I'm looking for the question, but I just can't get it, so he just continues talking. He goes, I'll tell you what. We both have something that the other one wants. I want your guys' testimony, and clearly you guys wanted to see the ranch. Otherwise, I don't think you guys would have been taking a picture in front of it. If you guys give me a testimony, I'll lend you one of our golf carts, and I'll let you two explore the ranch for yourselves. And I'll take you into the surveillance headquarters to let you see the behind the scenes of our scientific process here. What do you guys say? At this point, it was pretty clear to Sam and I that this guy was just an excited, quirky scientist. And if I'm being honest with you, his bargain sounded like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There's probably so many people that would pay cold hard cash for the opportunity to do what he just offered us to do for free. I didn't want to just say yes for the both of us because Sam was super intense just a couple moments ago. So I give him a glance and he's glancing at me, and we just both start laughing because he's thinking exactly what I'm thinking. Why not? Let's go. So Sam replies to the boss in a much more light tone. So you're gonna tell us what that blue thing is if we come in and do a testimony? And now we're just in some playful banter because the boss replied, I'll tell you what I think it is, but I'm telling you guys, something very special is happening here. Also, we never really get that close to those big blue meanies. Those things never want to talk to us. That line was a little bit odd to me in retrospect, but we were already climbing into their Tahoe. The other guys with them were really polite too, but they let the boss do the talking for the most part. But that line that he said, he had a little pet name for that blue orb. Big blue meanie? Meanie has a negative connotation to it, but was he implying that it was mean because it never wants to talk to us? And does that imply that there's other things on this ranch that do want to talk to them? It was just a very loaded statement that presented more questions than clarity. But we were already in this Tahoe headed to the ranch, so I would have my chance to get my clarity. The drive up to what he referred to as the headquarters only took about 5 minutes. It was a straight shot from the gate to the headquarters. And the entire drive up there, the boss was just reiterating what happened to us and how amazing it was to all of us in a dramatic story-like tone. He was telling it to us as if he was practicing how he was going to say it to the rest of the workers at headquarters. This guy was extremely performative and eccentric, and to be honest, a little bit annoying. It was as if he was using exaggeration and repetition to convince us even further that what just happened was some type of canon event in our lives. It was super bizarre, don't get me wrong, but he was harping on it too much as if it was this major significant moment in our lives. And like, I understand it's his life's work, so I get that he's passionate about it. But come on, dude. We both have careers and lives outside of this. Stop trying to make it seem like we witnessed a biblical level event with you and we're changed forever. So Sam and I are just exchanging sarcastic looks at each other. But we weren't going to ruin this opportunity to check out the ranch by giving this boss any pushback. So we just patiently waited until the Tahoe parked right outside of this pretty nice building. To be honest, the structure was nicer than I expected to be on a ranch like this. And I could see roughly a dozen people buzzing around inside the windows just working. The boss just gets out and leads the way, and he lets us know on the way in that today is a super busy day here. So we should just let the workers work and try not to get too much in the way. So he walks us in the front door, and he was totally right. There were like a dozen scientists just steadily working. They were just super engaged in their workstations and their scientific instruments. At a glance of the room, it looked like there was some people analyzing data on spreadsheets, people inspecting different soils under microscopes, and people testing materials in various ways. Everyone just looked super busy and in their own work, and nobody even acknowledged us as we walked in. They just kept all their heads down and focused on their own tasks. The boss just waves us over and he starts giving us a brief explanation about what each person is doing at their station. And to sum it up, these people were just trying to find any irregularities that they could find on the ranch. From otherworldly minerals in the dirt to hallucinogenic gases in the air to curious magnetic charges on specific items, they were looking for anything that could potentially explain the odd occurrences that happen here. We didn't even get the chance to ask them about what proof or evidence that they found yet before he waved us over to a second room. And this room was seriously impressive. The lab was pretty legit, but this room was seriously high level. This room was the surveillance room. There must have been 30 monitors lining these walls with a live stream from every inch of the ranch feeding into one room. They had this entire compound under 24-hour surveillance. And the man working that room was the only other person to acknowledge us since we arrived. The other two guys that came with us that were with the boss when we met them had dissolved into the busy work of the lab, and they didn't even bother saying bye to us. We just realized once we were in the surveillance room that they hadn't come into that room with us. But this surveillance guy was super friendly, and he just introduced himself as Tim. He had a similar energy to the boss. He was just extremely in your face, super passionate about the work that they were doing there, and he was overwhelmingly ready to attach a slightly odd occurrence that happened on the ranch to a web of out there theories about the ranch. And what I mean by that is when the boss started filling him in about what we just witnessed by the gate, he immediately started piling onto the story about something that was not true, but was plausible. The boss let him know that this thing rotated before it shot itself vertically. And Tim immediately piles onto what he's saying and just goes, it must run on the same technology from the craft from the gimbal video in 2015. They must be generating their own gravity and using it as a vacuum, so they're capable of falling forward through space. And listen, if you're not into the UFO subject, the gimbal video is a declassified video from 2015 of a UFO spotted by a Navy jet pilot that the Pentagon declassified and released. It's pretty interesting, but just randomly connecting this event from Utah from a legitimate military declassified footage is super out there. Don't get me wrong, I see the correlation that he's making, but the fact that he's just piling on to what the boss was saying as if what he was saying was fact and acting like they were on the brink of this massive world-altering discovery was just odd to me. Again, Sam and I are just standing there looking at these two like they are absolute quacks. Mind you, we just witnessed something bizarre, but the way that they were talking about it was so weird. But then it hit us what was actually going on here. We just let Tim and the boss keep talking, and they eventually just exposed themselves. They started slowly referencing their religion. They started making clear callbacks to whatever book it is that they follow, as their conversation started fading into multi-dimensional theories. Yes, that's correct. They went from big blue meanie orb to gravitational propulsion, straight to wormholes, and they ended in multiverse in the matter of 2 minutes. And they were talking about it as if they were on the verge of cracking the code. It was very clear to me what this was. These guys were taking every small experience that happened on this ranch and tying it back to prove that their religion was right. This was not about advanced alien tech or paranormal activity. This was about finding proof that their religion was the true religion. And I don't mean to disrespect any religion, I would never do that. But what they were doing was twisting the words of their book to feed a cultish fantasy of theirs. It seemed as if studying this place was an ego trip to them. They were going to be the ones that found the proof that their religion is the true religion. And that's why they were so enthusiastic about it. They had this religion-based purpose to everything that they were doing. And to be fair too, I wish that I could bring their level of enthusiasm into my everyday life. These guys wake up every day thinking that they're the chosen ones, and they're on a mission to prove their God right. And you gotta respect a man with purpose. But they were also so consumed by it, and they were in such an echo chamber that they were clearly willing to twist anything that they found or anything that they experienced to fit their big picture narrative. It was culty, straight up. But you're crazy if you think that was gonna stop Sam and me from seeing that ranch though. They were culty, but they felt harmless. We just wanted to get this testimony done so we could get our golf cart and explore by ourselves. And these guys are just going and going, so finally we have to cut off this conversation that the boss is having with Tim. We stop it by asking if we could just get this testimony out of the way while the thoughts are still fresh. What I really meant was, can we get this testimony done before you two clog my memory with your exaggerations and twists, but I kept that one to myself. They were super polite, they've been really nice up to this point, and they just apologized for going onto a tangent with one another. Then the boss just looked at his watch really quick and he said, "I'm so sorry guys, I actually have a meeting right now that I have to take. And actually I have to use the boardroom where we were going to do the testimonies, so the testimonies are going to have to wait. But don't worry, I'm going to have Tim here take you on a tour of the ranch so you guys don't miss any of the good stuff." And Tim's just standing there with a big enthusiastic smile, ready to be our guide and companion, while Sam and I are just standing there internally rolling our eyes that we don't get to explore by ourselves. We got to listen to Jolly Tim for the next couple hours talk our ears off. Not to mention, as the boss is leaving the room to go to his meeting, we hear Tim call out to Junior, and we're a little bit confused. That's until we see a 10-year-old run into the room going, "Yeah, Dad?" And Tim just embraces this 10-year-old kid and goes, "We're gonna take these boys on a tour, you ready?" So now, not only do we not get to do this tour by ourselves, we also have to be accompanied by a cooped up 10-year-old like we're at Disneyland. It is what it is though. Junior seemed like a pretty calm kid that wasn't gonna be annoying, so we just went along with it. So we all just walk out of headquarters and go straight to the golf cart. None of the workers acknowledged us leaving either, but science isn't based in customer service, so we let it slide. I'm not gonna take it personally, they're just busy. And obviously we're gonna be nice to Junior because he's just a kid. So we just start asking Junior questions about himself. So I just start off with, "Hey bud, you have a tour of the ranch yet?" Junior was one of those calm kids that has an adult-like feel to him. He would answer in completely clear sentences with little emotion and even less interest. And this kid just replies to me, "I've lived here my whole life. I know where everything is." Tim immediately butted in to clarify what Junior just said because he was definitely a little bit embarrassed about the topic. He reluctantly goes, "I moved onto the ranch full time when Junior was 3, and I'm a single father, so wherever I go, he has to go. He's been raised here, so he does know this place better than anyone." Then he turns his attention towards Junior to try to get him into the conversation. He just goes, "Are you going to show these guys your secret hideouts?" He tried to get Junior more interested in the conversation by bringing up his secret hideouts, but we could tell that it just made him a little bit embarrassed and even less interested in interacting with us. So Tim gave up on trying to get Junior involved and he just started the tour. So we started driving down the same road that we came up and we were just going deeper into the ranch. And then Tim started talking again. It was extremely clear that he was completely consumed by the idea that that ranch is extremely special. He starts the tour by going, "You guys have no idea how lucky you are. When I was called to take this job, I thought it was a bunch of nonsense. And trust me, I was a total skeptic when I got here, just like you guys. I thought all these guys were lunatics before I went on my tour. It was a life-changing experience for me. And after that tour, I never wanted to leave the ranch again. Promise you, these are sacred grounds. This place is like a meeting ground of space and time. It's the bridge to other universes. And it has the answer to any question as long as you're willing to stay long enough." At this point, I'm starting to feel bad for this guy because we're literally driving a golf cart through a light brown, beige, rocky ranch. There's no sign of anything unique here, and he's talking about it like it's Mecca. And at this point, I'm actually starting to doubt what happened to us at the front gate. The longer that we stay here and listen to these guys talk, the more it felt staged and corny. And I started to genuinely feel bad for Tim and Junior as Tim continued talking. He was clearly brainwashed with the lore of this ranch, and his mind was like too open. It was open to the point that any story that he heard about this place was fact to him, set in stone. And I was just looking at Junior as Tim just started another tangent about the previous owners of the ranch. And he started going on and on about how some impossibly large wolf attacked the old owner's cattle. And it all happened on the first day they arrived, and then it magically disappeared. And then he went on about some like dark creatures that crawled themselves out of Doctor Strange looking portals. Also, I forgot to mention that the massive wolf was also bulletproof and friendly to humans. It was just getting really out there. But anyway, we were just driving by some broken down fences and some old homesteads. And he continues his tangent about the previous owner's fence digging tool that randomly disappeared and got strung up in a tree a mile away. And then he goes on to how this homestead right here to our right had heavy poltergeist activity. This guy was regurgitating these stories like they were memorized verses in the Bible. It was like he rehearsed this and he was just spitting out utter nonsense as if it was truth in an attempt to sway us into wholeheartedly believing. At this point, this whole thing was feeling so gimmicky. He must have seen the expressions of non-excitement on our faces, so he ripped the golf cart to a stop, and he just points at a random structure to our right while saying, "Oh, you guys don't believe me? Let me take you through this house right here. You'll be able to feel it the second you walk in, and it's undeniable after you feel it." I look at Junior again, and he looks just as excited as we were to walk through a dusty old building. Not very. but we were trying our best to make the best of it. And if I recall correctly, Sam made a Ghostbusters joke that Tim seemed to resent, and it got a little bit awkward walking up to the house. And then I noticed Junior did something a little weird, because he was just looking at the house with a completely blank face until I saw a little smirk come across it. It was a smirk that signified to me that he saw somebody that he liked and recognized, and he was a little bit excited to see them and throwing a little smirk on his face. Then he gave him just a little kid wave, and then I look to see where he's looking, and I don't see anyone. So initially, I just assumed that this kid is just playing pretend in his head, and he was just going over made-up scenarios in his head and wasn't realizing that he was actually playing them out in real life. Kids do that all the time. They just talk their internal monologue. But it was still weird to me because he had been so chill up to this point. He wasn't one of those kids that physically couldn't control his impulses. So even though I've known him for just a couple minutes, it was out of character for him to me. So I noted it, but I brushed it off as we went into the house. And if I'm being honest, I did feel immediately off about being inside this place. Not because it felt haunted in there, but because the locks on the doors were overkill. The front door had like 6 different kinds of locks on it. And when Tim opened it, it had more locks on the other side as well. I couldn't understand why it would have locks on both sides. Like, what are you trying to lock somebody out but also lock somebody in? It doesn't make sense. It was weird, and Sam noticed it right away too. Tim definitely seemed nice, even though he was a little cultish, but it was weird that he chose to bring us in here. So we're on high alert as we enter. And Tim is just going on and on about more fairy tales when I notice a security camera in the living room. It wasn't a super surprise because of how many monitors that we saw in the surveillance room at the headquarters, but it definitely added to my suspicions about an already suspicious situation. Neither me or Sam were willing to walk any deeper into this house, deeper into the living room that we were already standing in. We were still right next to the open front door, and we weren't planning on letting anybody get in between us and that door. Even little Junior, you never know if the kids are in on it. So I abruptly break up Tim's fairy tale, and I just go, yo, what's up with the locks and the camera? I just felt like drawing attention to the fact that we were aware of the red flags in this place was a good idea. So he knew that we knew, just in case Tim was thinking about trying something. But before Tim gets the chance to answer us, Junior starts laughing and runs right into the kitchen. And he just goes into the kitchen and then takes a left into an area that we can't see. To paint the picture, right when you walk in the front door, directly in front of you, there's 2 archway openings. The one straight in front of you is the kitchen, and the one straight in front of you and slightly to the left is to the bedroom. And the bedroom, I could see it had like a back door exit. We couldn't see if the kitchen and the bedroom were also connected by an archway from where we were standing because there was a wall in between them. But Junior ran to the left when he entered the kitchen, so if there was an archway there and he continued to run, we would have been able to see him through the archway of the bedroom if there was an opening. Tim tried his best to grab Junior before he got into the kitchen, but he wiggled away from him and got away all the way to the left, and he was just completely out of sight. And then Tim just scurried after him as well, and then it just went completely silent. I waited about 2 seconds before I took a big step back and I made sure that my foot was in the doorway. I just wanted to make sure that nobody could close us in from the outside. I just had a weird feeling that they were going to circle the house and try to lock us in here. But to my surprise, Junior comes back running out of the kitchen and into the living room, and he's laughing and talking to somebody behind him. And naturally, we assume that Junior is talking to his dad, but he goes, haha, where have you been? So there's no way that he could have been talking to his dad because that doesn't make sense. It sounds as if he's talking to somebody that he hasn't seen in a while. So we just wait to see whoever it is that he's talking to. We're assuming he's with Tim and we think they're going to come back out of the kitchen together, but nobody comes out. Meanwhile, Junior's still laughing and giggling and saying yes and no to somebody as if he's having a fun banter and answering questions with somebody that's here. And I look at Sam and I go, I got the door, you check the kitchen. I'll make sure this stays open, make sure that they're not over there. He gives me a confirmation nod, and then he tactically walks up to the doorway and just peeks his head around to clear that side of the house. Then he loops back around to the bedroom to check that side as well. And he looks back, he's like, no one's here. I'm assuming that these 2 rooms connect. Where would he be going? Or Sam saw where he was hiding. But Sam just looks in the bedroom and just goes, bro, he's gone. I'm super confused, so I just go, bro, what do you mean? And Sam goes, bro, there's nowhere for him to go. It's just a cupboard in the kitchen. It doesn't connect. He's just not here. So now Sam's just standing in the bedroom doorway and I'm still standing by the exit. And Junior's just still standing there between us giggling. And Sam kind of loses his temper a bit and he barks at Junior like, yo, where'd your dad go? And Junior immediately points into the empty corner of the living room right by Sam and he just replies. He tricked him, just laughing and smiling, as if he just played a practical joke on his dad with a friend of his. Neither of us know what to say, so we're just staring at Junior until he talks again. And this kid goes, don't worry, he never hurts Dad. He just moves him. But don't worry, Dad always finds his way back. What? What does that mean? Neither of us know how to reply to that, but I could see that Sam is just standing there frozen. And I see him kind of glancing into the corner that the kid is pointing at. There was definitely tension in the room, but something in me felt like this was another gimmick. And I was about to make a joke to try to break the tension of such a silly situation. But then Junior followed up again by pointing at Sam and saying, "He said you should check out that mole on your neck." Sam does not hesitate a second. He bursts into action, picks up Junior, rushes towards me, and we rush out the front door. I just follow his lead and I just get out of the house as fast as possible. And Junior's just laughing his head off as Sam is carrying him running towards the golf cart. Sam just puts the kid down into the golf cart and we both start circling the house to see where Tim's hiding or to see if there's any exits on the outside that we weren't aware of. And I still don't know why Sam sprung into action like that, but I still just wanted to cover all the bases by checking the perimeter of the house before debriefing with him. So we finish our search of the house, we go back to the golf cart, and I just look at Sam like, "Bro, what was that about?" And he goes, "Bro, I felt something breathe on my neck while we were in there, I swear." And at the same time, he's rubbing his left shoulder with his right hand. And then he pulled the neckline of his t-shirt to the side a little bit to show me a mole that his t-shirt was covering. And he just follows up with like, "Dude, I got this mole checked last week. It's nothing. They said it was nothing, but it was on the same side that I felt that breath. How did that kid know about it?" So we both whip our heads around to start questioning Junior a little bit further. But he's just a kid and he's not taking it serious at all. And he was clearly very amused with what just happened. And he's just dancing around our questions. We try to ask him in about 10 different ways about where his dad went. And he just kept replying with things along the lines of, "I don't know, he just drops him somewhere random every time." It was so confusing because the lead up to that house felt so rehearsed. Tim literally said, "Oh, you don't believe me? Come in here." Then he randomly disappears. Part of me felt like this might be a prank. Part of me felt like they were just trying to make believers out of us. But Sam was really shook. He didn't like what happened in there. I knew that Sam wasn't in on this, and maybe they spooked him into thinking that he felt something that he didn't. But the detail about the mole clearly got to him. And I wasn't about to start making less of the situation because of my doubts. I didn't want to make Sam feel silly about being on edge. We both definitely had our fill of this place, so we both just decided that we're going to drive straight back to headquarters and head out. We're just going to drop Junior off with the golf cart and leave. As long as we drop the kid off with adults, we don't really care if Tim has to walk back by himself, because he'll survive and he deserves it for pulling a stunt like that. So Sam just throws the cart and drive, and we just whip a U-turn and start heading back from where we came. We were shook and we were definitely a little bit annoyed with the whole situation, so we stayed quiet for a minute as we were driving. And I'm just zoned out, just kind of looking over the horizon of the ranch for a couple minutes, and then I just feel Sam whip a U-turn. And I look at him and he's got a little bit of panic in his eyes, so I just ask him if he's okay, and he's just shaking his head and he's like, "Dude, I don't recognize anything, do you?" So I look around to take in our surroundings, and then I look behind us to see where we were going previously, and nothing looks familiar. So I asked Sam to turn around again so I could get a better look at where we were headed. And it's like a completely different ranch. Nothing looks familiar whatsoever. And I'm about to ask the obvious question about missing a turn, but Sam cuts me off and just says, "We drove in a straight line to that house back there, and we turned around and we drove straight back. We should already be at the headquarters, but I have no idea where we are." So we both get out of the golf cart, looking around in a panic. And I take a glance at Junior. He just looks so calm and content, like he doesn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, our world is shattering. I'm about to tell Sam to get back in the cart, and then I see something that's so confusing that I'm questioning to myself if I'm hallucinating. Right in front of us is a... So I want you to click on this video in the middle of the screen. If the next part isn't out yet, it's going to be what YouTube thinks you like. If the next part is out, it's going to be the next part. So just click here and just keep the story going.